The 4 remaining siblings are currently safe within the foster system, getting the professional help they require. A crowd gathered outside the Child Services office this morning while passing motorists blared their horns in solidarity, supporting the protesters, holding posters, showing their unity, and demanding justice for little Isabella. Once the full truth came out, everyone was asking the same haunting question. How did the safety nets fail? Why were so many pleas from the neighborhood ignored? And how could social workers determine the household was stable just weeks before the end? It is a painful inquiry because there is no easy way to explain it. A cascade of systemic failures happened at once. Social services were buried in work and focused on putting out fires rather than prevention. The father's criminal background sat in one database, while the kids' files were kept in a completely different one. Not a single soul bridged those gaps to recognize the true level of danger. Furthermore, Isabella being kept out of the school system cut off the most consistent way for outsiders to notice something was wrong. On top of that, people who are used to deceiving others know exactly how to play the system during a visit, teaching kids what to say and faking a sense of normalcy that is incredibly hard to pierce in a short interview. Washoe County Sheriff Darren Balaam eventually issued a formal announcement after this tragedy, pleading with the public not to wait for someone else to report a concern. District Attorney Chris Hicks noted that this ordeal has fundamentally shifted the way his department handles these delicate situations. The idea that every youngster, regardless of whether they are on the radar, has an absolute right to remain safe, and that right needs to be defended with proactive effort, not just reacting after the fact. In Nevada, a new legislative proposal known as Isabella's Law would mandate rigorous welfare inspections for any household where there is a documented history of past offenses against children. While the bill awaits final approval, this grassroots surge is gaining major steam and shows zero signs of slowing down. Folks had actually contacted Child Protective Services, yet the file was closed, which sparked a massive wave of public anger. As a therapist who has filed countless reports only to see zero action, it deeply hurts me knowing this outcome was entirely preventable. Isabella Loving only got 5 years and 8 months of life. She adored anything pink and danced whenever music played. She viewed her surroundings with such pure wonder that she helped those around her see the ordinary through a different lens. She earned a life filled with classmates, summer vacations, and those clumsy school theater productions, along with a birthday dessert and flickering candles to blow out while making a secret wish. She was denied all of that. Yet today, her name echoes everywhere. Legal experts now speak her name in courtrooms and welfare meetings. Those early snapshots where her inner radiance is so visible have evolved into the symbol of a campaign demanding that no future child stays invisible to the institutions meant for their protection. The individuals who struggled for years to be her voice are continuing that vital mission in her honor. If you notice a youngster nearby who seems unusually hushed or keeps to themselves, who avoids looking adults in the eye, or simply seems different from their peers, do not hesitate. Stop telling yourself it's none of your business or assuming a neighbor already dialed that number with Isabella. Plenty of people reached out and convinced themselves they'd done their part. Ultimately, it wasn't enough. Nevertheless, your solitary report could be the one thing that transforms a child's future. That is the basic dignity she was owed and what every single child deserves. Law enforcement officers escorted Andrea Loving straight into the Washoe County Sheriff's lockup facility. Being a father myself, I couldn't even fathom hurting my kids or letting someone else lay a finger on them. As a dad, my gut reaction is always to keep my little one safe. Honestly, the community's grief is just beyond description. One specific thought is going to haunt your mind well after the screen finally fades to black. How many kids are suffering in silence just a few feet away from our own homes without us ever knowing? Stick around until the very conclusion as the closing segment shares vital info on spotting red flags in your own neighborhood. That bit of insight could eventually prove to be far more crucial than you might realize. Picture a toddler opening her eyes each day, realizing there's no classroom to attend and no fresh air to breathe outside. She had no friends to join her, feeling like the real world was a distant planet while her whole existence was trapped inside 4 walls. Isabella Loving was only 5 years old. She was obsessed with pink and would groove to any beat she caught, being such a radiant, sweet soul. The authorities knew her, the folks next door saw her, and advocates truly tried to go to bat for her. Yet, despite all those eyes on her, help did not arrive soon enough to save her. We're diving deep into this actual tragedy to expose the cracks in our safety nets and learn how we can collectively prevent another nightmare like this. Once the gruesome reality of what went on behind those closed doors was eventually revealed to the public, the local prosecutor addressed the media, and longtime colleagues remarked that they had never seen him look so visibly shaken and distraught. Even the seasoned investigators on the team, people who had seen it all over 20 years, were caught sobbing at the crime scene. It was not that they were new to tough files, but rather that the red flags had been hiding in plain sight. Agencies were involved, tips were filed, and inspections happened, yet the outcome was still tragic. This is Isabella's journey, and it must spark a change. I am Kevin, and the whole point of this channel is to focus on a single, vital mission. We're here to give a powerful voice to the little ones who were forced into silence while they were still with us. If this is your first visit, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you are alerted when the next update drops. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment letting me know your current city and what time you are tuning in today. Every single message from across the globe serves as a testament that Isabella's legacy lives on and her message is being received. This is the final gesture we can offer her, ensuring her memory isn't swallowed up by the void of indifference once again. Born on July 5th, 2019, Isabella's first snapshots capture a baby girl who seemed to glow with a pure inner joy. She was absolutely head over heels for anything pink, possessing that fierce, simple conviction that only a young child can truly have. The second a melody started playing, she would start busting a move, regardless of where the sound was coming from. She would lose herself for hours in her art supplies, building vibrant, tiny universes of her own making, checking out her surroundings with such pure wonder that the grown-ups around her started noticing the beauty in the everyday stuff again. Anyone who crossed her path back then told the same tale. She was a spunky, spirited, friendly girl who craved connection, loved big, and had a grin that could instantly brighten up a whole room of strangers. The person who nannied for the family when Isabella was just a baby recalled a bubbly toddler who received the same care as the other kids. She was just a small girl beginning her journey with pink toys and dancing. Revisiting those moments today and being aware of the eventual outcome, it is heart-wrenching to think about those days without feeling a massive weight on your soul. As Isabella was learning to walk and explore, her household was already shadowed by a dark history, a record that social services had flagged and was buried in paperwork across various Nevada state departments, well before this sweet child had even entered the picture. Her dad, Nicholas Loving, faced charges back in 2013 for hurting a 2-year-old boy who was his girlfriend's son. Though the judge initially handed down a 3 to 8 year prison term, the sentence was put on hold, giving Nicholas 5 years of supervision. The court felt the man seemed genuinely sorry for his actions, noted he had a steady job, and believed he should get a shot at redemption. Tragically, that second chance ended up costing Isabella her very existence. Still, what is even more baffling than the legal ruling is the path Andrea decided to take following the incident. Even though this man had physically mistreated her own little boy, she did not just walk away from the relationship. She actually tied the knot with him, started a new family, and chose to welcome him right back into her living room. Isabella entered a world already occupied by a young boy, a child whose tragic history served as a glaring alarm everyone somehow missed. Throughout her toddler years, the family remained somewhat open to society. They even employed a nanny to help around the house. The kids were seen in public, maintaining a facade of normalcy that successfully masked the darkness simmering right under their roof. However, in 2021, their highly anticipated son was finally born. Following his birth, witnesses noted a subtle yet permanent decline in the family dynamic, especially after they dismissed their regular childcare provider. Andrea transitioned into a full-time parent, becoming the sole grown-up who had constant, unsupervised contact with the little ones. Consequently, the wall between their private life and the community grew thicker and harder for anyone else to see through. The vibrant girl who once loved to dance and radiated joy in every family photo slowly started to fade away into the shadows. She vanished initially from the group portraits where the siblings used to stand side by side as happy, equal members of the family. Soon she was absent from casual talk and missing from the everyday events where a young girl would typically be found playing. By the time she reached kindergarten age, her parents never even bothered to register her for any local school district classes. They used the label of homeschooling as a convenient cover, a move that seemed plausible enough to prevent neighbors from suspecting anything. Yet, schools act as a vital safety net where trained educators track a student's physical well-being and emotional growth over time. These institutions provide nurses and mandated reporters who are legally obligated to flag any suspicious signs to the proper welfare agencies. By exercising a simple choice under the guise of parental rights, they severed Isabella's connection to any professional oversight, and society complied. The truly heartbreaking part is that she wasn't actually hidden. People could still see her, which makes the outcome even worse. Those in her orbit witnessed what was unfolding, spotted the red flags, and attempted to intervene by doing exactly what a responsible citizen is supposed to do. Ashley Viney, a professional counselor and relative to the eldest son, had spent years tracking the disturbing transformation within the household. Through countless interactions over the seasons, a once spirited, cheerful girl with sparkling eyes withered into a shadow who refused eye contact and spoke only in barely audible one-word replies. She began to shrink within herself, moving with a posture that suggested she wanted to be completely invisible to everyone around. Year after year, Ashley filed a series of formal complaints with Child Welfare Services, hoping someone would finally step in and help. It felt like they would just tell her she was doing fine, walk out the front door, and consider the matter finished. They mentioned some internal safety protocol was in place, but honestly, those children needed to be taken out of that environment immediately. Even a local librarian felt compelled to contact authorities after observing the stark physical deterioration of the young girl during their brief visits. Several other neighbors dialed the emergency hotline to voice their fears. The bureaucracy churned, and social workers were eventually dispatched to investigate. The assigned investigators conducted interviews, filed their routine paperwork, and ultimately decided there was no reason to remain on the scene. Andrea was a master of manipulation, knowing precisely which words to use and how to project the image of a caring mother. She had also systematically brainwashed the kids, drilling them on exactly what to say to outsiders to keep their dark secrets well hidden. Being totally reliant on her, the children obeyed her orders, giving the investigators the rehearsed answers they were looking for that day. The file was shelved, and the nightmare persisted behind closed doors. Just 30 days before the final tragedy struck the home, local social services finalized their inquiry, officially declaring that the parents were providing a healthy and supportive environment for their young ones. Just 4 weeks stood between that clean report and the horror found behind that door on April 3rd. 2 weeks before the end, the whole family took a vacation to the Disneyland Resort, the ultimate symbol of magic and wonder, filled with towering castles, thrilling attractions, and beloved costume characters around every single corner. Thousands of happy families were there, with excited kids sprinting around and eagerly dragging their parents toward the next big adventure or show. Right in the middle of all that manufactured happiness, a picture was snapped that would eventually serve as a haunting piece of forensic proof. That photograph didn't capture a beaming child enjoying a dream vacation. Instead, it depicted a girl in such obvious distress that it seemed impossible for the crowds to ignore her, yet they all did. Maybe they glanced her way or sensed a brief flicker of concern, but everyone simply continued on with their own holiday plans. Staring at that picture, Ashley was baffled by how the system could see that evidence and her repeated warnings yet do absolutely nothing. Despite the mountains of documentation and previous alarms, social workers had visited the home and formally stated that the situation was perfectly acceptable. Detectives eventually concluded that even while she was at the theme park, Isabella's health was failing. Disneyland was the final trip of her short life. If this story moved you, please share it on social media or text a friend. It isn't just about channel growth, but rather about making sure more folks learn how to spot these warning signs in their own communities. Put this video in a playlist to revisit later. There is a vital detail at the finish worth keeping in mind. And hit the like button, as that is the only way to get the algorithm to show Isabella's story to new viewers. Her voice deserves to reach everyone. In the final days of March 2025, Isabella was deathly ill. Any guardian seeing a child that way would have called doctors. That kind of choice doesn't require any thought. It is a natural reflex. It is how every adult acts when a little one is suffering. Nicholas and Andrea did not do that. For several days, they just watched her and never once reached out for help. When detectives later asked them why they avoided medical care, their response stunned even veterans who had heard every kind of excuse imaginable. Those parents claimed they weren't actually worried about their daughter dying. They were terrified that medical staff would start digging. After years of keeping their family life completely hidden away, the fear of being caught had become far more powerful than their own parental instincts, stronger than basic logic, and even more important than their own child's life. On March 30th, 4 days before the end, Andrea was home and was fully aware of the day's events. Even though she had every chance to call for backup or walk out with the kids, she didn't lift a finger. According to the detectives, that was the specific day the situation reached its peak, which, paired with Isabella's general state, made her survival almost impossible. Proper care at that exact moment might have saved her, but it was never provided. On the night of April 2nd, 2025, Nicholas tucked a very sick Isabella into her bed. Around midnight, a sister woke up to scary noises and went to find their parents. Nicholas and Andrea checked the girl, said she was fine, and went back to sleep, even though both had the chance to do something else. At 2 o'clock in the morning on April 3rd, Nicholas noticed that Isabella wasn't breathing. The events inside that house over the next 5 hours were mapped out by police using texts, witnesses, and logs. Those parents weren't losing their cool or putting in any real effort to save their little girl. Instead, they sat there chatting casually about where they should run to, had a lie about what happened and what to tell the police, even debating if they should just pack their bags and flee the state entirely. The child they should have protected wasn't mourned. To them, she was just a messy complication that required some careful management. At one point that night, Nicholas nudged the other kids awake. He did it softly, like he was mentioning something trivial. Those poor kids just stood there in the shadows, staring back at him. At 6:55 that morning, nearly 5 hours later, Nicholas Loving finally placed the call to emergency services. Right before we see what happened next, if you haven't joined us yet, please subscribe now, because every case here involves a living soul and a real child offering a vital lesson. It isn't for entertainment. It's so you might one day spot a crisis that everyone else ignores. Check out the rest of our content. You can find all the relevant links listed below. Don't go anywhere, because Isabella's tale has more layers. Emergency teams made it to the scene in under 7 minutes. What they discovered inside that house on Crystal Canyon Boulevard immediately changed the investigation. This was no longer a medical call. Officers walking into the residence found a scene that completely contradicted the story the parents had spun. While the siblings had real beds, Isabella was relegated to a thin pad on the hardwood floor without any frame at all. Police also uncovered a crude homemade crate in the nursery, which the couple eventually confessed was used to control the child's conduct. Nicholas first stuck to the script he and Andrea practiced, blaming her injuries on her supposedly being naturally clumsy, claiming he had every intention of setting up an appointment with a specialist soon, and insisting he was always at work and barely around. However, expert questioning breaks people. The cops already knew about those 5 hours, and they were fully aware of what was said that evening. It was clear the phone call hadn't happened at dawn, like Nicholas maintained, but nearly 5 whole hours following the grim discovery. Little by little, his narrative crumbled leading Nicholas to confess the true sequence of events. He confessed everything. He further confessed to utilizing it personally as a tool for controlling his little girl's conduct. Throughout her interrogation, Andrea corroborated the events of March 30th, providing a vivid account. As the session drew to a close, she uttered a phrase that stands as one of the most haunting remarks in this entire investigation, suggesting that she belonged behind bars herself for failing to shield the child. This was a raw admission of her complicity. Those were her exact sentiments. However, in the courtroom, both guardians maintained their innocence. The formal autopsy performed by the Washoe County Medical Examiner finally clarified every lingering uncertainty. Isabella Loving's passing was neither the result of a typical sickness nor a tragic mishap. It was the culmination of long-term patterns established by the adults charged with her safety. These were decisions that stripped her of the basic security every youngster deserves. A series of heartless priorities, time and again, where their own needs eclipsed her well-being. Nicholas Loving was apprehended the very moment detectives secured enough evidence to move forward with the prosecution. The magistrate established a $10 million cash-only bond. Both sides opted to skip his personal appearance to avoid a confrontation. Yet, Reno Justice Court Judge Kendra Birchie finalized the $10 million bail amount, characterizing the man as a severe threat to society and a major flight concern. By August of 2025, once the forensic medical reports were finalized, the inquiry unearthed a specific fact that makes this whole tragedy feel even more heavy and suffocating. Back in 2013, Nicholas had already been in trouble with the law for his conduct toward a youngster. Authorities were aware of his history and potential for harm, yet granted him supervised release instead of incarceration, effectively clearing a path for him to start a brand new household. Andrea was taken into custody in July of 2025, and that initial neglect charge was just the tip of the iceberg. As the authorities pieced together the extent of her involvement over several years, the gravity of the accusations intensified that December, leaving both parents in legal peril. They denied the charges, skipped preliminary hearings, and the matter proceeded to the Second Judicial District Court with a full trial slated for 2026. Her name is now spoken in courtrooms and welfare reform meetings. Her early photographs, full of light and joy, have become the face of a campaign demanding no child stays invisible. If you see a child nearby who seems unusually quiet, avoids eye contact with adults, or appears withdrawn from the world around them, do not assume someone else has already made the call. With Isabella, many people reached out and convinced themselves they had done enough. They had not. Your single report could be the one that changes a child's future. You can report concerns about a child's welfare to the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-422-4453, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you believe a child is in immediate danger, call 911. Do not wait for certainty. A report that turns out to be unnecessary causes far less harm than silence that arrives too late. Washoe County Sheriff Darren Ballum urged the public, do not wait for someone else to report a concern. District Attorney Chris Hicks stated this case permanently changed how his office responds. Isabella only had 5 years and 8 months. She deserved classmates, summer vacations, birthday candles, and a secret wish. Every one of those things was taken from her. The people who tried for years to be her voice are continuing that mission in her honor. The question this case leaves us with is simple and urgent. How many children near us are still waiting? Isabella Loving will not be forgotten. Her name is the reason the law is changing, the reason people are paying attention, and the reason we must never look away from a child in silence. Isabella Loving was 5 years old. She loved the color pink, danced to every song she heard, and saw the world with a wonder that made adults pause and look again. She never attended school. She had no friends nearby. Her entire world was four walls, and behind those walls, the warning signs were mounting for years. Neighbors noticed. Therapists filed reports. Child Protective Services opened a case and then closed it. just weeks before Isabella was gone. Her father, Nicholas, had a prior conviction for harming a 2-year-old child in 2013. The court granted him supervised release, believing he deserved a second chance. That second chance placed him back inside a home with children. Isabella entered a world already shadowed by a history no one had fully connected across the databases. After the family dismissed their nanny and withdrew completely from the community, the wall between their private life and the outside world grew impossible to see through. The vibrant girl who once danced in family photos slowly disappeared from public view, not because her family moved, but because she was deliberately kept out of sight. When investigators finally entered that home, even seasoned veterans with 20 years of experience were found weeping at the scene. The red flags had been hiding in plain sight. The father's criminal background sat in one database. The children's welfare file sat in another. Not a single person bridged those two systems in time to save her. A child who is invisible to the system is invisible to everyone, and that invisibility can become a matter of life and death. Isabella's case has now sparked a proposed Nevada law, Isabella's Law, which would require mandatory welfare checks in any home with a documented history of child abuse.